how inspiring it has been to listen to all these wonderful speakers and amazing topics, taking us through all these different journeys, journeys through the city, journeys through the country, and even through life. But today, I'd like to take you a little bit on a different type of journey. A journey that can be scary at times, a journey that can be uncomfortable as well, but also a journey that can be rewarding and life-changing. I'd like to take you through a path of introspection, and that introspection can lead to learning and growth. And I would like you to leave today with one thing for yourself and about yourself. Throughout my life or I would say my career as a coach and as a coach educator, I've encountered numerous people that were passionate about causes that were very, very important to them, that were really close to their heart. And I always wondered, how do activists keep pushing boundaries? How do these people that are building those sustainable communities keep going and moving forward? And for me, when I think about activists, I think about people who are resilient. People who are focusing on themselves first, who at least know themselves very well, so they can truly lead from the inside out and focus on others. Activists are people who work for others, but with others. They work in partnership, hand in hand. Because the reality is you can't build sustainable communities without building a sustainable self. You can't build sustainable communities without an open mind. And you can't build sustainable communities alone. And so let's start a little bit about the sustainable self. For me, there are three key things that are important when we think about building ourselves as sustainable individuals. The first one is about the purpose, finding our why. What is that thing that is truly motivating us day in, day out? What is that thing that wakes us up in the morning, that keeps us up at night, and I should say probably for the right reasons? The why is that process of really focusing on exploring our values, those things that are really important to us. And I'd like you to take a piece of paper, and I'm very conscious that it might be difficult right now, but take a mental piece of paper. And on that mental piece of paper, I'd like you to think about what are your three top values, those things that are really, really important to you. And I'd like you to think about one thing. How do you live these values day in, day out? How do you make sure that they are present in your life as you wake up in the morning all the way to the evening when you go to bed? And when you go back home, write them down on a paper and put them on the fridge. Put them as your screensaver, whatever that is. But keep reminding yourself of those values. And as we move from values, we can then think about, now that I know what's important to me, where do I belong? Belonging is a bit of a difficult one sometimes to define. And the way I like to define is, when you think about these communities you're part of, these groups you're part of, do your eyes shine? Because if they shine, then you're probably in the right place. But if they don't shine, you get to ask yourself one question, which is, where do I need to go so my eyes shine? You want to really be part of that community. You want to be able to put yourself forward. Last but not least is about resilience. When we talk about resilience, and as I was talking about activists earlier on, they are resilient people. And there are many ways to define resilience and look into how do we build that resilience for ourselves. But I want to leave you with one thing here, which is to reflect on 4 domains of resilience. The first one is the physical. That's your body, that's your sleep, that's how you eat, all these different things. The second one is the intellectual or the mental. the things I learn, how I grow, how I develop. The third one is the emotional one. Am I sharing my emotions? Am I understanding them? Am I spending the time to listen to them? And the last one is the spiritual. How do I find ways to connect to a bigger purpose? And the question I want to ask you is, when you think about these 4 domains of resilience, how much are they in balance? How much of a coherent self are you across these 4 domains of resilience? And again, if it's not there, that's not a big deal. Think about what can you do to be able to create more of that balance, to create more of that coherence. So I talked a little bit about the self. We started with focusing on our values, moving on to where do we belong, and thinking about being resilient. Once we have these 3 elements, that's when we can start moving to the next step, which is to think about leading from the inside out. And when I talk about leading, I really talk about taking responsibility and ownership to run those communities, to be part of them, and to help them grow and develop. And to be able to do that, we must keep an open mind. And keeping an open mind, for me, there are 3 things that are important. The first one is having a growth mindset. A growth mindset is really that mindset to say, I may fail. I may be wrong. But I'm able to learn from it. I'm able to move forward. I'm able to think, what are the strategies that I can really take to be able to keep moving and use that learning? And when we talk about growth mindset, it's really about being curious. It's being open, again, open-minded to the outside world. And that's creating that link with what is the missing part of the story. The second thing I want to talk about here, when we talk about keeping an open mind, is that beautiful question that is here, which is what if? Whenever you're in doubt, use this question. What if I can do it actually? What if the people in front of me are even 1% right on what they're sharing with me? What if I'm able to grow and develop as I go along? So you can see we're moving from the past and maybe things that are holding us back to moving forward, moving towards the future. And using what if enables us to really open possibilities. We're really going into the realm of possibilities. What are the options? What is truly possible? And really harness that power of possibilities. So we move from the past into the future, and now let's go back a little bit into the present, because the third element here is really about letting go. And not letting go of anything, letting go of our assumptions and letting go of our judgments. Because again, these are things that really hold us back, and to be able to keep an open mind, we need to be present in the moment. We may encounter people who have very different ideas to us, who think very differently. How do we create that connection with them? By letting go. And I want to share a story with you. It's one of my favorite stories. I use it all the time when I talk about diversity and inclusion. So here is the story. And you may close your eyes if you want to and get into the story, if you feel comfortable with that. We're in a small town in the US. On the left is the sheriff's office. In front of you is a street lined up with shops on both sides. And at the end of the street is a bank. It's very hot. It's sunny. We're in El Paso County, Texas. The bank is at the end of the street, and there is a robbery happening. A father and a son robbing a bank. The sheriff's team arrives on the scene, and the father manages to escape. The son gets caught. As they drive back to the sheriff's station, they enter the station the son enters the station, and the sheriff turns around, looks at the son, and says, "I can't believe it. That's my son." So, bank is being robbed, father and son. The father escapes, the son gets caught, and he's being brought back to the sheriff station. As they enter, the sheriff turns around, looks at the boy, and says, "I can't believe it. That's my son." What do you think happened there? So raise of hand, how many of you have thought the sheriff is the mother? I have 2, 3. That's not a lot. This is how judgments work, how assumptions work. Very quickly, we use our brain day in, day out, and we have to decide extremely quickly on a number of pieces of information. And so we take decisions quickly as well. But when we're in a situation where suddenly we encounter something that is different to maybe the information we already know, we may take the wrong decisions. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. We all have judgments, and some of them are very good. We do need to run away from the saber-toothed tiger sometimes. I mean, that was a while back, but we do need to do that. But what I want you to do is, whenever you enter one of these situations, observe yourself and ask yourself that question. Am I making an assumption here? Am I bringing any judgments that might stop me to create that community and to be able to allow others to belong as well? So we got the sustainable self. We've got the second part here, which is really about how do we create that environment where maybe others will belong. And we can now move to the next step, which is creating that togetherness, creating those sustainable community, creating that place again where others belong. And creating a place where others belong is very difficult because it is about partnering. And partnering is about taking ourselves out of our comfort zone. As I said, the others might be different. And taking ourselves out of our comfort zone means being vulnerable. And being vulnerable is a very difficult act sometimes. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to close the divide. We need to be able to create a bridge in the gap of that space. And the way we do that, and that's probably a skill that I'm very aware of, because as a coach, that's probably one of the top skills that I need day in, day out, and it's listening. Except that, let's be honest, these days, we're not always very good at listening. It's a skill that has been used for hundreds of years, thousands of years even, and sometimes we don't do it very well. So we need to really come back to not listening to ourselves, but how do we make sure that we listen to the others? Because listening requires intention. It requires us putting ourselves in the shoes of others. It requires curiosity. So to be able to close that gap, using our skills of listening and that curiosity is going to be extremely powerful. The second thing, to come back to the vulnerability, is to be honest with ourselves as well, and to the fact that we do need to be vulnerable sometimes. But to be vulnerable, as I mentioned before, is about being courageous. And courage is not always an easy thing to do. Sometimes we need a bit of a push. And so I have another story for you, which is actually a coaching joke, I should say. And imagine yourself, we're in the land, and the ruler of the land is looking for the most courageous person in the land. And what they do is they build a swimming pool. And in that swimming pool, careful guys, they put sharks and piranhas and crocodiles. And the ruler of the land says, I'm looking for the most courageous person in the land. And for that, whoever is going to cross that pool, swim through that pool, and come out on the other side would be the most courageous person in the land. And so everybody is gathered, wondering, who is going to do that? It sounds insane. It's impossible. Until suddenly, they all turn around, and there is one person in the pool, going as fast as they can through the sharks, through the crocodiles, through the piranhas, and then they arrive on the other side. They come out, and they are completely out of breath. And the ruler comes to them and says, "What do you want? You're the most courageous person in the land. How can I reward you?" The subject comes out, and he's really still like catching his breath. He's really struggling, and the ruler is insisting, "What is it that you want? I want to reward you." And the subject turns around and goes, "I want to know who's the idiot who pushed me in the pool." Moral of the story, we do need a bit of a push sometimes to be courageous. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to give you that push. I'd like to give you that push by asking you 3 things. The first one is tomorrow morning, when you wake up, take 10 minutes of your time and write down those 3 values on a paper and keep it wherever you can see them all the time, so you can remind yourself of these 3 values. The second thing I'm going to ask you is next week, take a second to think about where is it that you should belong? Where is that place that makes your eyes shine? And the last thing is a week later, I'd like you to take half an hour of your time to think about what am I going to do to create those sustainable community? Because to create something, we need action. But action doesn't require a lot. Action requires a drop of water. That one little thing that you can do that is going to make an impact on the people around you. That's the most important part. Creating action is about a process that happens every day, purposefully and consistently. So lead from the inside out and go take that action. Thank you.